Jennifer Jean here. Tonight I'd like to talk about Hagar from Genesis 16. I've been thinking a lot about Hagar over the last few months, and she and I are actually going to get to know each other a lot better over the course of this next year as I do some more research on her life. If you are unfamiliar with the story of Hagar, again, that's found in Genesis chapter 16. We first find Hagar in Genesis chapter 12. She's not mentioned by name, but when Abraham and Sarah go to Egypt during a famine in Bethel, the Pharaoh gives Abram and Sarah a lot of men and women to be his servants, also a lot of livestock and possessions. So Hagar is obtained by Abraham and Sarah at that time. We meet Hagar by name in Genesis chapter 16. Now, God had given Abraham the promise that he would have descendants more numerous than the stars. The only issue with that is that Sarah, his wife, could not have any children, and they were both about 86 years old and still did not have any children. Now, in Bible times, a little after Noah, they still lived for 1 to 200 years, but still being 86 and not having any children wasn't a good situation. So they waited on God for a few years to provide the promised heir, and Sarah continues to not get pregnant. So then they come up with a plan to help God in this promise. Now that's our first warning flag. Whenever we think that we need to help God with the things He has promised us, we need to stop and get our hands off that situation and continue to wait on Him and trust Him. But Sarah comes up with this plan for Abraham to marry her servant Hagar and have a son through Hagar that would be Abram's heir. So to help God with his plan. Now, poor Hagar, we can probably come to the conclusion when she was in Egypt, she was a slave. She may have been 8 or 10 years old at the time she was given to Abraham and Sarah. So first she's an Egyptian slave, then she's a maidservant to Abraham's wife Sarah, and now she's going to be used once again as Abraham's wife of convenience to have a son. And even then she wouldn't get to keep her son. He would be raised as Abraham and Sarah's son. So she's never had anybody that's really cared about her or that really sees her beyond what they can use her for. So she does get pregnant with Abraham's child, and at this time she's either an older teenager or in her younger 20s. So she becomes prideful. She becomes arrogant towards Sarah. She doesn't want to obey Sarah anymore because she's having Abraham's child, which Sarah never could. It's that young mindset of being invincible and not having to follow the rules. So Sarah goes to Abraham and she's like, Hagar's not listening to me. She's your problem. You got us in this situation. Now you deal with it. Now let's remember Sarah was the one that came up with the plan for Abraham to marry Hagar. And, Abraham kind of dropped the ball there too, in that he should have told Sarah no. He's the man of the family. He's the leader of the family. He should have said, no, we're not going to do this. We're going to keep waiting on the Lord. But he did not. He went along with the plan. So Abraham, he has no emotional attachment to Hagar, even as his wife. He tells Sarah, she's your maidservant. You deal with her however you want. So Sarah, we're told in Genesis 16, mistreats Hagar to the point that Hagar decides she's going back to Egypt. She doesn't want to live there anymore. So she flees, she sets out. And, it's a journey of 50 miles from where they are at around Bethel to Egypt. And, I don't know if you've ever been there, the situation goes bad. You find yourself stuck, you find yourself with no options, you don't feel cared about, you feel alone, you don't have a plan, but you take off. You're just out of that situation. So that's where Hagar is. And, mid journey, she stops at this well in a town called Shur, Shur. And, she's thirsty, she's pregnant, she wants to rest, get a drink before she continues on to Egypt. Now, once she reached Egypt as a young single mother, her options as far as income would have been very limited. It's possible she maybe would have been a temple prostitute or had to sell her body, let her body be used and abused once again. Not a better situation at all. So she stops at this well for a drink of water. And, there she finds the living water. And that's true in our situation. We can, in the midst of our fleeing, whatever situation it is, stop and take a break, and then God appears. Now, at first, she thinks it's just an angel that appears to her. The angel asks what she's doing, and she says, I was mistreated, I'm out of there. And so then here in Genesis 16, 8, well, actually, verse 9, he says, the angel of the Lord said to her, return to your mistress and submit yourself to her authority. Moreover, the angel of the Lord said to her, I will greatly multiply your descendants so that they will be too many to count. You will bear a son, and you shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has given heed to your affliction. He will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand will be against him, and he will live to the east of all his brothers. So, at this point, then she realizes it's not just an angel, this is God. And this is the first mention of an angel in the Bible, but also this is a Christophany. So, a Christophany is an appearance of Jesus in the Old Testament. So, because we're told in John 1:3 that all things are created through him, and that without him nothing was made that has been made. God set the plan in motion for creation, and creation happened through Jesus. So the Trinity is the only beings that can create, that can multiply her descendants. So we know this angel was Jesus. And she realized it as well. And so she names that well. Or actually, she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her, You are a God who sees. And that name is El Roi, E-L, and then separate word, R-O-I. I do have kind of a theme for the names of God in the Bible. I really enjoy finding them, finding out more about them, where else they're used. So this is El Roi, the God who sees. So Hagar went from feeling like nobody cared about her, nobody saw her heart, nobody saw her for who she really was, to meeting God at this well. Like he met her, he came to her, he saw her. And then, even though she was in this situation that wasn't his will of being Abraham's second wife, he still blessed her and blessed her son that she would have, telling her that he would be the father of many nations as well, which unfortunately he became the father of nations who fight against the Israelites, God's people. But anyway, God still had a plan and a purpose for Hagar and her son. even if others didn't see her beyond how they could use her. And she also named the well there Bir Laroy, and I probably mispronounced that, which means the well of the living one who sees me. And so that name has always been special to me, the God who sees, because we can feel, as a mother, as a worker, serving in different capacities, sometimes we feel like nobody truly sees us. And it's not that we're doing it to be seen, but nobody sees beyond what we're doing. Do people see our heart? Do they see our struggle? Do they see our exhaustion, our need for encouragement? We can feel overlooked, but God always sees. He's always with you. He's omnipresent, so he's everywhere at all times. There's never a place you can go where God is not going to be there with you as well. So my prayer, my hope tonight is that through Hagar's story, her situation didn't get better. She went back to be Sarah's maidservant, and she stayed for another 14 years, but then had the same situation where she had to flee, and she didn't go back after that. So her situation didn't change when she went back, but she was changed on the inside because she knew that God was with her and that God saw her and that he loved her. And as long as we have that, then we have everything, because all that we need, God is. So thank you for watching and listening, and I hope you have a good night.